Hey guys, Plasticon here. Just wanted to pop in and talk to you guys a little bit about some projects and stuff like that that I tend to work on. Um, One of the things I tend to work on quite a bit. Sorry, eyes are bothering me today. But anyway, I have a lot of different things I tend to do. A lot of people are like wondering why do I tend to build robots that never existed or kind of a weird version of something, and just other projects that I tend to do. And everybody's like, why don't you use 3D printing? Why don't you use, CAD? Why don't you use polystyrene? Why don't you use these kind of items, right? And one of the things I did want to talk about was the fact that living in a very small apartment, it's hard to do those things. Ventilation is a big thing when it comes to using 3D printing. You have to have a way to vent the fumes, because all it's initially doing, a lot of people think, oh well, I print something and it's done. Well, when you're printing something, it's melting plastic, and plastic gives off an odor whenever it does its thing. And some of those that or resin printers, any of those, tend to actually have a way to vacuum that stuff out, but you actually have to have a way to push the ventilation outside your enclosure that you're doing it in, whether it's your room, a shop, basement, whatever you're trying to do. The odor tends to be a little much, and it's actually toxic for you to actually breathe that kind of thing. It's not a really good thing to be breathing. It's like as if you were using different types of glue and such. And some of those types of glue is very, very harmful to your body. So it's one of those big reasons why I don't get into having that type of thing. First off, I don't have space for a 3D printer. Second off, I don't actually have the skill. I've never used one, and some people are like, well, okay, you don't actually have to have skill to use one because they all do automatic stuff now. That's great, but I'm also one of those kind of people that likes to tinker and figure out how everything 100% works. I don't like investing in something that I don't know how it works 100%. And another thing is, I'm not very good at CAD. I don't know how to do CAD. And some people are like, well, you don't have to do that. You can go and download people's, files and stuff that they have. That's great, but I'm one of these kind of people that if I'm going to pay $13, $14 for a file, I want it to print right the first time, especially when it comes to materials, because those spools of plastic cost money. And investing money in a print that I'm not sure if it's going to print off correctly is more money invested, and actually having the printer itself is more money invested. So if you see, it's a huge hole to jump into when it comes to 3D printing on my end. Now yes, I know I can go through places like PCBWay and stuff like that that can print off the pieces. If I wanted to do that, I would just do that, buy the kits and put them together myself. But the thing is, it costs money. And in my current state and lifestyle, I don't have a lot of money. Some people out there have tons of money to be able to toss toward this stuff, and that's great if you got the money for, masterpiece robots and all this Soul Shogogan and all this crazy Gundams and stuff like that. I don't happen to have that kind of money. But what I do have an abundance of was some crazy knockoffs I bought a long time ago. And I tend to take knockoffs and turn them into more a sizable item to fit in my collection, because I collect stuff that's about Hot Wheels size and smaller when it comes to the robots being, fully put together by themselves. Now, if they combine together like a G1 Menasor, a Defensor, you're combining robots, I consider those all pretty much Hot Wheel size. They're a little bigger, but not by a lot. They fit in with my collection. I do have a Predaking it's a knockoff, but I do have a Predaking that's pretty much one-to-one scale with the G1, but I There's a few exceptions because I consider them more of a kaiju kind of thing. Um, when it comes to my scaling, I have an idea in mind of what I want. If it's a large robot, it's got to turn into a base, or it's got to have some kind of alternate way of being used. Like Glacial Lord, when I bought him, they're a bunch of animals. They turn into robots. They turn into smaller robots. They have a whole scramble city. There's a whole play pattern to them. And I like those because they're not huge. They're not big. Yeah, Glacial Lord may be this tall, but he's one of the tallest things sitting on my shelf. Now, that being said, I tend to build other things. I tend to build play sets and such because I want to make these. Well, I don't build them out of conventional stuff that most people tend to build things out of. I don't go to a wood shop and buy a bunch of wood and create that kind of thing because first off, I don't have a shop to do that. I could do that, but I don't have the capability of doing that right now. So what do? I build the stuff out of, more cheaper material. Now, some people want to talk about polystyrene. Polystyrene is nice. It's great to use. I've used it for a few bits to repair my Millennium Falcon I have. But I'm not going to sit there and spend $10 a sheet. And the sheets are only this big. They're small sheets. They're not huge. If it was a sheet like the size of a piece of plywood for $10, I can see that. But it's not that big. And the thing is, it's also very, very finicky material to work with. You have to know exactly what you're doing when you're going to cut the pieces, because once you cut them and snap them, it's done. There's no going back from that point. And it's very, very expensive to work with. It also requires special kinds of glue. I actually have plastic weld, so I can do that. But plastic weld tends to be expensive, and it's not a cheap thing to get, and it's not easy to find either unless you order it online. And if you order online, you got to go through the whole rigmarole of them sending a chemical through the mail. Think about that, how much of a pain in the butt it is here in the United States to get that kind of thing. And with a post system and all this stuff that's going on with the world, I don't even want to deal with any of that. So what do? I use foam core. And foam core and cardboard tend to work just as well because I'm building this stuff just for my own collection. So, for instance, on a Facebook site, I put this little dude up. And this is my, let's see, there we go. See him a little better here with the light. This is my version of a Road Caesar that I made with some knockoff Micromasters. And I'll get around actually doing a review of him, but he's all made of foam core. I painted him, I put all the decals on him, I did all that stuff. Why did I do this? Why did I opt out to do this? And by the way, that is a knockoff head I put on there as well. So this is actually a robot head that I put on there. But the fact of the matter is, these things are not hard for me to make. They're small, and I could fit them on a shelf very, very easily. And when it comes to other robots I've done, I took a undersized Superion and decided to redo him and turn him into Overlord. And these are actually pieces of plastic. I'll get more into what I did there, but there are times I will reuse things and use foam core as well. There's nothing wrong with this. A lot of people tend to balk at the fact that I was like, oh, well, you used foam core for all this stuff, so it's not going to last. Well, let's be honest. What really does? What really does last? Some people out there are like, oh, you buy a third-party toy, it lasts forever. No, it doesn't. Tons of times there's been third-party toys you buy and a joint breaks on it. How do you replace that joint? You can't, because you can't contact the manufacturer. And if you try to hunt down a broken one of it, it's probably broken the same way on several other ones. So this is an easy way for me to be able to fix and repair things. It's made of foam core. How hard is that to fix? I cut out another piece, glue it back in. Or the piece wears out, I just replace it. It's very cheap, very simple, and it gets the point across. It allows me to be able to create things the way I want to create them. And like I'm saying, playsets, that's what this thing is. I'll get around and review it sometime. But it's a huge playset that I built, and it's a Micromaster based thing that was never released. I decided to make my own. Some people out there, I've seen a guy out there is trying to 3D print one that's going to actually make the thing turn into a robot. That's great. I didn't want it to turn into a robot. I just wanted to turn it into the base, and that's it. I want it to be as close to what I could create as a original piece. And the reason I do this is because it's good for my mental health. I like to be creative, and it helps me cope with the world. It's a big reason why I do a lot of customs. It's a reason why I do a lot of crazy stuff that most people don't tend to do with their toys. I don't like to take an original GoBot that is in pristine condition and do a custom out of it. I'll take one that is ratted out, messed up, joints aren't the greatest, maybe it's gouged in a couple places, whatever, and I will repurpose that toy into what I want it to be. It's just an example. I tend to do this with all different kinds of things. I've done it with Transformers as well. I tend to chase down knockoffs that aren't really that expensive, ones that aren't really that rare, and I use those a lot for my customs because they're so much easier to get hold of. I'm not killing an entire community by doing that, and there are times I've even took old G1 toys that were really pretty much unsalvageable and fix them up and make them into Generation 2 if I wanted to, or whatever other character. This is the stuff I tend to get into. I tend to enjoy this kind of stuff. It's a good pastime for me, and I do know a lot of people out there that tend to not understand that or rag on it or whatever. They're like, well, why aren't you doing it this way or whatever? This is my question to you. As a creative person, I tend to look at feedback as a good thing. If something doesn't look right, I'll usually go back and fix that. But if something is pretty much perfect in my eyes because it's an art piece, I'm not going to change that. But if you guys are out there wanting to create stuff, do it. Go for it. If you're not a creative person, fine. But my thing is when you're looking at other people's stuff, don't be so harsh and critical on it, because if you haven't done something like that yourself, then you probably should step back and actually look at the process and see how much time and effort goes into this stuff. Although it only took me basically an evening to make this guy here. I planned it about a week out ahead of time. How was I going to do this? How am I going to attach the robots? And by the way, every robot on this is not altered. They have a slight little bit of paint and stuff that I add to them, but the thing is, I didn't have to alter the robots to attach them to this. So they all fully transform still. So this is still a Transformer. Whether it's authentic or not, it's still a Transformer. And the thing is, some people are like, well, why is his arms like that? Why doesn't he have like cars for his arms? And I'm like, Road Caesar never had that. He just, the main bot in the center pretty much built the whole upper torso, and then you just slapped a couple of cars on the bottom for legs. I kind of went about the same route here, but we'll see more about that whenever I get into the actual review. But that's the thing. I enjoy building model kits. I enjoy making my own robots. I enjoy customizing things that actually exist out there and make them even better. Make them better in my eyes. They don't have to be 100% for everybody, but that's the thing I want to try to touch base with, because customization is actually a thing you learn over time. I learned it from doing model kits when I was young, building Lego when I was young, doing all different kinds of stuff like that, and then learned to work with all different kinds of materials, whether it was paper, wood, metal, just junk out of a junk drawer. You'd be surprised what you can build whenever you start actually looking at things and broadening your horizons and your expectations of what something should actually be manufactured out of. Because in a lot of ways, when I create some of the stuff that I create, I'm keeping stuff from ending up in a landfill. There are lots of toys and such that I've created out of junk. Like this guy here, there's a lot of junk that I went through to build this, and this would all ended up in a landfill. And I saved it by turning it into a toy. So, it may not be the most durable thing in the world, but hey, as long as it works for me, that's all that matters, because at the end of the day, you guys collect what you want to collect, you build what you build, and you create your own world. Me, downsize my entire world to make it fit more of what I wanted to have in my life. Anyway, this has been Plasticon, and this is me signing off. Peace out, you guys. You guys have a good day, and continue creating out there if that's what you guys are doing. That's it for now. Bye.